today we are talking about secrets of prepping that the Amish use. I would say the Amish are the ultimate preppers. Today we are here with my friend CJ from the Amish Potato. I have been watching you since you had like 1,000 subscribers.
Oh, wow.
And I was so excited when you agreed to go ahead and share tips. So I went down to our local Amish community to see, because now some Amish will agree to be filmed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what's changed on that. Do you know what's changed on that actually?
I haven't known of any. Maybe some New Order Amish might. I think typically the stricter Amish usually still don't want to be filmed.
Okay. So anyway, I went down to see if they would be filmed, and they didn't want to be filmed, but I was actually able to talk to them and interview them a little bit. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to see if CJ, he is a former Amish, or how do you say that? That didn't sound right when it came out. Is that what you say? You're former Amish, I guess?
Amish, ex-Amish.
Ex-Amish, okay. So you used to be Amish.
I used to be Amish, yes.
And your parents and your family are still Amish?
Yes. The majority of them are,
yeah. Okay. And CJ has a YouTube channel, the Amish Potato. And you got that name because you were living in Idaho, right?
Yes.
And so you're ex-Amish, and Idaho's famous for the potatoes. But now you live in Wisconsin.
Michigan.
Or I mean, Michigan. Yeah. Sorry.
I Michigan. Wish it was Wisconsin.
Yeah. Isn't that nice? And I was sure you should change your channel to the Amish Pothole. I was sure. I don't know why it's not changed yet, but I'm sure that was a brilliant.
My wife told me I can't change it. One of my viewers suggested the Amish Spud Mitten. That might work too.
There you go. That's funny. That's funny. Okay, so guys, go check out his channel. I've been watching it for a long time now, and you have some really good stuff on there, just talking about the Amish, and you have firsthand information. So it's not just rumors or hearsay or that kind of thing. You've actually lived it. Your family is still Amish, correct? And so tell them kind of a little bit your backstory, your story of how you were Amish, why you decided not to be Amish anymore. And let's hear a little bit of that first before we get into some preppy tips.
All right. Yeah. First of all, I want to clear something up. The Amish range from very strict to more modern. The more modern, still not driving cars, not having electricity. I come from one of the more modern communities where although we didn't have cars and electricity, we still were allowed to use power tools. We had generators, we had running water, refrigerators, and things like that. The other spectrum is where the Amish are so strict that they don't have any running water. They have outhouses. They're not allowed to use power tools, and they have to live on a dirt road. They're not allowed to live on tar or paved roads. So I do come from more of the modern community, and so my story, I was raised Amish as an Amish kid up until I turned 16, and then we were allowed to do the Rumspringen thing, which literally translated means running around. But that's just, we just hung out with the youth. And at 16, we had to make a choice of whether we wanted to kind of get a car and dress non-Amish, what we call dress English, and then we would party on the weekends. Or we could have kind of stayed Amish, kept driving a horse and buggy, but still hung out with the youth.
So let me just say one thing real quick here. Oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Just for everybody who doesn't know, Amish people call non-Amish people English.
Yep.
So just for those of you who don't know, because some people don't know, I didn't mean to interrupt, but just so that they're familiar with what words you're using. So.
Yep. I kind of hate that term because it's not correct. But
do you know why they call them English?
Probably just because those are English-speaking people.
Okay. Because Amish speak
Pennsylvania Dutch.
Yeah.
We have our own language. Not German, but Pennsylvania Dutch.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Just clarifying that for the people who didn't know.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. So I did that for years, and I found a girlfriend and was planning on getting married. And in order to get married, she had joined the Amish church. I didn't really want to, but I had to get married. So I did join the Amish church. I forced myself to do it. And then she left. And then I left. She left me, I guess. We broke up. And then I left the Amish church and moved to Idaho. It was a really hard time in my life. It was what people call the desert experience. I was to the point of I was wishing I was dead. I was praying for God to just take my life. You know, it was a hard time in my life. But now looking, at the time I was wondering where God is in all this. Like, where are you? You know, why am I going through this? And at the time I didn't see it, but before I turned 16, I accidentally gave my life to Christ. I got saved, right? I just surrendered it all to him at 15 in a horse and buggy on the way home from a friend's house. But I didn't know what that meant, because I always thought the Amish, I always was taught that in order to go to heaven, that you have to become a member of a church. Since I was raised Amish, I would have to become a member of the Amish church and get baptized. And that baptism would be the born again that the Bible talks of or speaks of. And then when you get baptized, being born again, you're clean, right? You're free of sin, but then you have to live a good enough life after that. And then hopefully it's good enough to get into heaven.
Which is not the true gospel.
Nope, it's not. Yeah.
Yes. But a lot of people don't know that. And especially the Amish. It's funny because I often say Amish aren't really true Christians. I mean, people think they are, but if you're truly following the Christian gospel in the Bible, doing the works to get into heaven is not a part of that. And so that's interesting. I didn't know you were so young when you gave your life to Christ. So that's really interesting. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And then just through all that, I think that was God, looking back now, I was saved, and that was God was working in me through all that struggle and stuff to get me out of there. We're always taught as Amish kids that, the Amish church is the best church. It's where we were raised. It's where we're supposed to be. It's, if we leave that, that's walking away from God's plan for us. And so, yeah, I now see that was God putting that desire to leave the Amish, not wanting to be Amish in my heart so that I would leave. And there's more people who are Amish who get saved and eventually they end up leaving as well, because God just draws them out of that religion. Right. So, yeah, I moved to Idaho, and I didn't, I started listening to some Charles Stanley on the way to work. I didn't know which church to go to. There's a smorgasbord of different churches out there. So I just started listening to Charles Stanley on the way to work in the morning. And I started realizing that it's, the work is finished, like that I'm saved, and that when I die, I go to heaven. And it was such a freeing feeling. And it's just been amazing ever since, just not having that burden of, am I doing good enough? Will I go to heaven? And yeah, I can't explain it. I wish everybody could be at that spot in their life.
Yeah. Cause you'll never be good enough.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so I have to tell you something kind of funny about this. You and Mike have a lot in common, actually.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So what's funny is when we moved to Idaho, we had only been married, I think, a year or so, I think. Mm-hmm. And he was a really new Christian. He only became a Christian about 6 months before we were married. But what's funny is he was driving to and from work in Idaho. He started off going 70 miles, and then he ended up working we lived in Nez Perce, and he drove 100 miles to Pullman, Washington. He listened to Charles Stanley too.
Oh, really?
Going back and forth. And that's what really helped cement it for him also.
Wow.
So that's hilarious. I'm going to tell you, he's going to love you after that. Cause he's like, that's one thing that he always talks about, was how just listening to Charles Stanley was able to really just confirm it for him, and make it just, he didn't question it after that, I guess is what I want to say. And so I think that, that's one of the main things, is to find a good pastor, but it is hard to find churches now. I mean, so if people, I would just listen online at least while you're trying churches. So Val wants to know, you were so young, how were you able to live on your own?
Well, so I didn't leave until I was 28, 29. I was in
Okay.
Rumspringa for like, over 10 years. And
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't like it. I was sick and tired of it. Had I known how this, being saved works, I would have probably found a church at the age of 18, 19.
Okay.
Because I was already wishing, I was looking at non-Amish churches at that point in time and was like, I want to, I want to go in there. And I don't know why. That was just, the Holy Spirit in me drawing me towards that. And I just didn't listen because I didn't really even know to listen. So I kept on partying and being convicted of all that stuff until I was like 29 and sick and tired of it.
So if you are living with the Amish, let's say you're not baptized into the Amish church yet, can you live indefinitely with the Amish if you want, if you're not baptized?
Yep. So in my community. So that is my community. The kids who turn 16, 17, they get their driver's license and they live at home with the cars. Their parents will ask them to take them places. So their own kids will drive them to places where they can go out for groceries or whatever. And this is definitely not like if in the stricter communities, if their kid gets a haircut, they get kicked out. It's our Amish were way more lenient and
okay. Stuff. That makes sense. Yeah. All right. So we're going to get into some questions about prepping because, as we were talking, we were like, well, wait a minute. The Amish already supposedly live without modern conveniences. How do they do it? And so the truth is they don't. The majority of them don't live without modern conveniences. You can speak to this a little bit, but they do use generators, they use solar panels, they use propane, they have refrigerators, they have freezers, they have power tools. And so they don't actually really live as off-grid as what people think they do. But let me get to the first question. This will kind of work into that. First of all, do the Amish know what's going on with the world? Like the gas prices going up and, all the turmoil and that kind of thing. Do they pay attention to that kind of stuff? Does it bother them?
Yeah, I can only kind of speak for the ones in our community. Yes, they're aware of it. They have enough friends or youth that have cell phones and stuff, so they know what's going on. They know that the world's chaotic kind of right now, or the chaos of it. They know where the gas prices are at. They know because they have to pay taxi drivers to get them around, and they're charging more and all that stuff. So I don't know how concerned they are with it, but I don't know where it's going. Okay, yeah. So they know it's chaotic, but they're still just kind of in their own little bubble and just kind of doing the daily grind thing, and they're just they trust in the Lord, I guess.
So are they stockpiling more or anything like that? Do you notice? Or
I would say no,
just they're normal. So how do they do their food? Do they grow everything that they eat? Do they rely on the grocery store? How does that work for the Amish? Because a lot of people think, if things just totally go to pot, then we're all going to be growing gardens, and we're all going to have our victory gardens, and we're all going to be living all year off of our garden produce, which, one hailstorm will take care of that. Yeah. But how do they do that? Do they live off of just their garden produce? What do they do if they have a crop failure?
Yeah, they don't in our community. I know the stricter communities do that. They a lot more so. They still have to go to get supplies, right? I mean, I don't know that anybody can ever live without a grocery store. But like in Kenton, Ohio, I think they do a ton of canning, ton of gardening, ton of butchering. They might even hunt deer out of season. But
is that legal?
Kenton,
is that
Ohio,
legal?
It's not legal, no. They just get away with it. And because they're Amish, a lot of times the law will just turn a blind eye. But in our community is very wealthy because of the RV industry. And even though most Amish still have a big garden or two, a lot of them are buying canned goods at the grocery store because it's just cheap and easy. So surprise, right? typically,
my great grandma, she homesteaded southeastern Colorado. It was one of the last homesteading things from the Homestead Act. And she was so happy when they could just always buy canned goods. She absolutely hated, making 17 loaves of bread for the harvesters and doing her own canned goods. She just thought that was the best thing ever. And I think because people who don't have to rely on food from their garden to survive don't realize how much work it really is.
It's a ton. So yeah, we used to have 3 large gardens growing up, and I remember it seemed like every day, all day long, we were pulling weeds. And Mom did a lot of canning, of all the veggies and strawberries and stuff. But yeah, now she has one decent sized garden, but she doesn't do a whole lot of canning. It's just easier to go to the grocery store and buy it. Unfortunately, I hope they're not getting too far away from that. But
yeah. Do they use pesticides and herbicides and stuff?
Yes. I don't know what types they use, but they have in the past. I remember spraying stuff on our potatoes for potato bugs. I think we used DE too, diatomaceous earth. I remember Dad spraying stuff. I think Amish are more in our community are becoming more and more aware of this stuff though, and they're trying to find healthy alternatives. The Amish women are catching on as far as healthy, trying to eat healthy, trying to do things a little bit more healthy and organic.
Oh, really? Interesting. Huh. So several people wanted to know, how do they refrigerate things like dairy and cheese and meat? What do they do for refrigeration?
So the Amish in our community use LP propane refrigerators. They are not they don't work as great as electric, not as reliable, but that's what they use. We did have 2 neighboring church districts that still cut ice in the wintertime. They would go out on a lake, Cass Lake in northern Indiana, and they would cut ice because they still had the ice boxes. They still had to harvest that. They weren't allowed. I think they had running water and stuff, but they still had to. They didn't have refrigeration. But for the rest of us, we had refrigeration.
So how does the running water work? Are they hooked up to city waters, or is it hooked up to a well, or
it's hooked
cistern?
Up to a well with a gas-powered motor or a gas-powered engine to run it. Yeah.
Okay.
We had to, every time. So we had a big pressure tank and a storage tank, right? And every time the pressure got too low, that the water wasn't running in the shower or something, we'd have to start the motor. So we would, we'd be in mid shower or something, the water would run out, and we'd have to yell downstairs or whatever, start the motor. And then, there'd be a 5-minute argument on who's going to get off the couch and go downstairs and start this well pump.
That's funny.
Motor.
So Beth wants to know, why do the Amish only allow other Amish to buy and sell from each other? I have never heard that. Have you?
I haven't. Nope. That's usually the
She
Amish.
says that's the strict Amish, but I haven't even heard that with the strict Amish. I don't know.
I think they would be allowed to sell to outsiders.
Because that's actually how a lot of the Amish earn their living, is selling to outsiders. I mean, it's a whole tourist industry. And even not tourist industry, it's still people, buy the Amish canned goods and stuff like that, or at least they think so. How do they deal with when it's really super hot, like 106 degrees out? How do they deal with staying cool?
Yeah, they suffer through it. They so in our community, they're allowed to have some battery operated fans. So they have those blowing at night, especially to try to cool things down. The house, they will open the windows at night, close them all down in the morning, and then just hope it doesn't warm up too much inside. They sit around. My family kind of sits around and puts their feet in pails of water or something. If they're sitting outside doing something, that kind of helps you cool down a little bit. And then the Amish have been known to take their family on little vacations to the local hotel where they can swim and sit in AC for a couple days during the heat of the summer. So usually it's only like a week or 2 here that it gets really, really hot and muggy.
So Oh my goodness. So they're allowed to go on vacation to a hotel and use air conditioning there and all the conveniences there?
Yep. So.
Okay, so we are going to address this at the end, but I just have to ask right now, how do they justify this? I mean, it's okay to say one thing. It's okay to say, I just want to live this way. You know, I want to drive a horse and buggy. I want to heat with wood or whatever, not have air conditioning or something. But to say it's a religious practice, but then the hypocrisy of it all, how do I have never heard anyone explain how they justify that. So do you have an answer to that?
You can't. I don't think you can justify it. You can't. It just makes no sense how, like you can't have electricity, but you can have a generator or solar power, which a lot of them have generators now that put with cords running into their house for washing machines and stuff like that. So they'll run their generator and then just run sewing machines, washing machines inside the house, but no electricity. So what they say is, the Amish in our community anyway, don't believe that electricity or cars or anything like that is actual sin. But they don't want to allow electricity in the home because that will lead to maybe TVs and radios and stuff. And then it's too easy to get caught up in the world, in the worldly things. And I kind of see their point in this. You just get captured with that, and it's a lot easier to sin, which might lead you off the straight and narrow path. So
that makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
There are stricter communities, however, that will say that cars and electricity are sin. And I don't know how they can say that when they then pay somebody to take them somewhere.
I know.
Paying somebody to sin for them.
Yeah. Huh.
But
that's pretty interesting.
I think,
I don't know.
I think living the simple life is great. I think it's a great way to raise a family, just with less, a simpler life with all these less, conveniences. But you have to make that choice as a family. You can't put that on everybody else through religion. It can't be part of, Christ and what Scripture.
Exactly. There's no basis in the Bible at all for it. I mean, I know that they use the Scripture, be in the world, but not of the world. For some of them, they're trying to not be of the world. But why did you decide to pick, the late 1800s as that point in time where the world, stopped to be out of the world? So, I can see that. But, it's like any other false religion. You get these rules and you think these rules are going to get you into heaven. And so, that's just kind of the way it keeps getting passed down, I guess. That's what I should say. Let's see. Kimberly Nash, actually, I'm going to answer this question real quick. So guys, just so you know, real quick, I am with the Amish Potato, CJ. He is another YouTuber and he is an ex-Amish. I'll put his link in here for you guys to go check him out. I started watching CJ, oh my goodness, I don't know. It's been a really long time. And he very kindly offered to answer all the Amish questions because we get a lot of Amish questions on there. It's surprising. Huh?
I'm honored. When you first reached out to me a while ago, I fell backwards out of my chair. I was like, what?
Thanks. Oh, well, here I was excited to talk to you. I thought we would actually meet in person one day when we took our kids back to Idaho just to see where they were born or something. Oh. And so I was like, oh, if we ever go back to Idaho, and now that we're in Wyoming, we're a lot closer. So I thought, oh, yes, we're going to do that. And I'd been watching, then you disappeared for, I don't know. You disappeared for what, 2 or 3 months, couple months. And then you came back and you're like, we moved to Michigan. I was what? You can't move to Michigan. I just moved to Wyoming. Now I got to go further.
Well, maybe we'll have to swing by sometime we go back to visit. Because I miss Idaho.
Isn't it?
The Western states.
It's funny. We really miss Idaho too. It's if it wasn't for the fact that it's gone off the deep end now with everybody moving in, honestly, it would have been a big toss-up between Wyoming and Idaho for us because we just absolutely loved it. But yeah, so anyway, but now it's kind of all the Californians and the Coloradoans and all of them are moving in. And so I totally know how it changes everything. Let's see. Let me get back to some more prepping questions here. Let's see. We did the dairy refrigeration. Oh, this is a big one. So, working together. So I know working together is a big thing for the Amish, which is a really good thing. But here's my question. What do you do when you don't get along with people? How do they work those things out, trying to work together in a community and you don't agree? Is it bishop? Are they called a bishop? I can't remember what the
bishop
high up is. Yeah. Does he just make the final decision, or how does that kind of working together work when you don't get along?
That's a good question. I think, say, if there's two parties that don't get along, they might, if it gets out of hand, they will go to the bishop. And then if the bishop needs help, he'll get some other men involved and they'll hash it out. Typically, though, Amish are really, they're not outspoken so much. Like, they'll just, if somebody offends them or anything like that, they'll just take the back seat, and you don't see, I don't like saying this, you don't see a whole lot of fighting in the Amish community, because as soon as I'll say that, then I'll hear a bunch of stories where people weren't getting along. You know what I mean? But
that's the way it always is.
I just didn't see it. So
yeah, that's the way. Today I ran in to get one thing at Walmart, and Mom's like, I've never seen you go into Walmart and get one thing. And she's like, you actually got one thing? I said, yeah. So she turned around and looked at the clearance aisle. An hour later, we were finally out of Walmart. I said, Mom, this was your fault. You said something. And it's true. You say something, not to be superstitious or whatever, but that as soon as you say something like that, it automatically seems like it happens. So I get that. It seems like they get along well as far as everything I've seen. I don't live with them, of course, but Susie wants to know, do they make their own? Oh, this is interesting. Do they make their own homemade bath? I think they mean like soaps and stuff like that. And do they make their own homemade bath and clothes washing soaps? So, like, do they make their own soaps for cleaning and their clothes and their bodies, I guess?
There might be some who do. I don't think I knew anybody who does. We bought all of that. Some of the stricter communities might. But
they pretty much buy everything we use except for their clothes, I would say.
Yep.
Is that about right from what I've seen?
I would say so, yeah. In our community anyway, yep. And even the men's shirts are bought. They're not made anymore.
Really?
Pants and dresses are still made. But yeah, underwear and the men's shirts are all bought. And a lot of like the bed coverings, they buy those too now. Somebody makes them and sells them, so they just buy them. So you can actually go to Shipshewana, Indiana, and buy Amish clothes if you're interested.
Maybe I should do that. I should just do that just to harass Mike one day. Well, and it's funny because somebody says I buy Amish soap. What's funny is the Amish make soap to sell as a business, but they probably don't use it themselves. Well, I mean, if they're making soap, they probably use it themselves, but like the typical Amish family isn't outside over a kettle making soap in the fall, like they used to.
Yeah. And here's something to be careful with. Amish are not allowed to label their products with the name Amish, or they don't put, if they build furniture or if they make soap, they don't say Amish made soap. It'll just be sold as soap, right? Or their brand on it.
Is that an Amish thing or is that a regulation thing?
I think that's an Amish thing. So they're not allowed. That's an Amish thing because that would be prideful. That would be using their name to sell their product better, because it would sell better just because of the name, right? So like you won't see Amish furniture shops, that Amish owned furniture shops that say Amish made furniture. It'll just be C&D furniture or something like that, That does not mean, though, that if you buy furniture that's advertised as Amish made, that it's not Amish made, because some Amish might be working for non-Amish owned furniture shops that then sell the furniture as Amish made. Does that make sense?
Say that again.
So a non-Amish person, an English person, might own a furniture shop.
Yeah.
Sell their furniture as Amish made because he actually has Amish employees working for him.
Oh, so it'd be like if I was making soap and I just had Amish people making the soap for me, I could sell it as Amish made soap.
Yep.
And I could call it Amish made soap because I'm not Amish.
Yep. But if the Amish are selling the furniture or the soap themselves, they don't label it as Amish made.
Because it's vanity or pride.
Yep. Yep.
That's the reason why they don't like their pictures taken, right?
Yeah. That one I haven't quite figured out yet, because I don't see pictures as a graven image. But yeah, they go back to the graven image in the Bible.
Isn't that interesting? Oh my goodness. Sneaky. Sneaky advertising. Yeah. Now I will say, I don't know how to say this nicely, but they are kind of, let's see. How do I say this? You guys know me. Tact is not my spiritual gift. I noticed that they're very, I don't want to say conniving, but they're very, like the lady here, she just went out into a farmer's field and put up a sign for her store without asking permission.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll just go do things because they want to do things, whether it's legal or not. And I'm like, lady, this is Wyoming. You're going to get shot even if you are Amish. But they are very, very, not really shysters. I don't want to use the word shysters, but they're very.
They can be a little sneaky. Yeah.
Yeah. They aren't always honest, I guess, is what I'm trying to say a little bit, and some of their practices and that kind of thing. And so brash, yeah, shrewd is probably a better word. Yeah.
They'll do whatever they can, just as long as they don't, they'll push the boundaries as much as they possibly can, just without actually stepping over that line. Yeah.
Or if they step over the line, then they kind of, plead innocence because they know nobody's going to shoot an Amish person.
Yep.
That's another thing. Are they allowed to have firearms?
They are. They do a lot of hunting. A lot of them are hunters. In our community, they just, they follow all the laws and stuff. But yeah, some have many guns.
Wow. Yeah, I was talking to the family down there, and the little girl, she was probably 12, and she was talking about getting her her elk hunting license. And she was all excited to go elk hunting, and I didn't know that they were allowed to use guns. So that's something new that I had learned from them. Kimberly says, oh, she's true. This is what I'm trying to say. I don't find that the Amish have a lot of respect for the non-Amish. Yeah, they kind of skate around the rules, and they kind of, we stayed at a Mennonite house when we went to visit Pennsylvania, my daughter and I, and they didn't have any kitchen cabinets, and it had been like 8 or 9 months. And I said, well, what happened? And I said, was there a problem or something? They said, well, and they were trying to be nice about it, but what it amounted to was the Amish people that they had hired to make their cabinets kept not doing their cabinets because the English people were paying more. And so they would just brush them off and take the higher price paying English orders over a Mennonite's order that had been done quite a while before and paid for it,
Why is there 2 different prices to begin with?
Yeah, I know.
I think that happens more in the stricter communities. I would say so. It probably depends on the person, but I've heard of that type of thing going on.
Let's see. Okay, so now a few people wanted to know this, and I was like, okay, so can outsiders, we had a lot of people really interested because they were saying, oh, I love the Amish. I think it would be great to be Amish. Can I become Amish? Can anybody just walk in and be Amish if they want to?
Yep. Yes. Yep, you can. And probably, I don't know about the strict communities, but the more modern ones, like our community, you can. I would advise not to. You would have to talk to a bishop, find a bishop anywhere. You would have to talk to them, and you would have to go through a 9-class thing where you learn the ordinances or the rules of the Amish. You would have to follow those rules at that time, be an 18-week period, because they only have church every other Sunday. So 9 churches, 18 weeks of following the rules. And then if you do okay, you don't break the rules too much, then you can become a baptized member of the Amish church, and now you're in. Now you have to live like the Amish for the rest of your life. And I know it sounds great. There's a lot of positives to it, but an outsider will always feel like an outsider. They always,
really?
People who have done it and they've come out, they've left because they just never fit in. And there's something about, like, if you're not raised in the Amish community, it's just, there's something different. Like, there's something different about the kids who are raised in the community. Like, I can sit in a restaurant and some Amish youth that I don't know, even from out of state, walk in, I can instantly pick them out as being Amish. And I don't know for sure what it is, but there's something. And just people who step in there, they just never fit in and they struggle. The language barrier is the big one.
It's kind of the same as moving to Idaho.
Yeah.
We lived there 3 years and we never had any friends, nothing. We tried. I mean, Mike was involved in all this stuff. He worked for the county. Mike worked for the county. Like, every person in the whole county talked to him. And we didn't have any friends or anything. So we were leaving we left 3 years after we were there, just not because of that or anything. But it was so funny because we left and everybody was like, "Oh, you guys are the nicest couple. We're going to miss you so much." I'm like, I've said 2 words to you the entire time I've lived here. So I totally get what you're saying with that, because, it is hard to move in from a culture that you've never been a part of. Can they marry into the Amish faith? How does that work? Do you have to be baptized Amish first?
Yeah, you have to be baptized Amish first. You have to be a baptized member. There is actually, I think 2, I know of one at least, that a guy fell in love with an Amish girl and he decided to go Amish, and he is now an Amish preacher and has been for like 30, 40 years. So,
oh, wow.
It does happen. And I wouldn't advise it, definitely because of the false religion part of it. Right?
Yeah. Several people asked the Amos Miller farm rate. Do the Amish know what's going on with that? What do they think about that? And what is their thoughts on that?
The Amish around here don't. I've been telling them about it, asking them, and they're just kind of clueless. Or so, not all of them, I guess, but I'm sure they would. If they do know what's going on, they don't like it, what's happening to them, because they see their freedoms being taken away. The Amish roots is, a home farm life, milking their own cows, drinking the raw milk, and selling their stuff off of the farm. And the more the government cracks down on people like Amos Miller, then the more they're going to crack down on the smaller guys. So yeah, they don't like it. They don't go support, though. I wish they would, just for that cause.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of that, not to play devil's advocate, but I'm going to, I can kind of see a little bit of that, because my mom had 2 friends. I think I commented this on your channel when you were talking about this, but my mom had 2 friends in the 80s that were hospitalized from raw milk. And so, I mean, they got really, really sick. So I'm not a big advocate of it, but at the same time, I'm figuring if you're an adult, you can figure out if you want to drink raw milk or not. And I do have to wonder a little bit, is it that the Amish are trying to skirt around the rules or something like that? Or is it just strictly the government has decided to target them? Do you know? Because I haven't really looked into it that much or anything.
Yeah, I think they're targeting Amos Miller because he's big. So he's not.
Oh.
So you have to be a member of his club in order to purchase his products. And I think he's like 4,000 members. There's 1,000 other people doing the same thing, California, wherever, non-Amish people. They're growing their own meat and their eggs, whatever it may be. And then club members are actually purchasing a portion of this farm so that they can go buy meat, food. But they know where it comes from. They can see that the animals are raised not in tight little pens, and they're out in the pasture, and they're being raised great. So they pay like 3-4 times the amount of money for this food. And this is what Amos is doing. But I think he's gotten so big that now the FDA or they're trying to control it. What he's been he's trying to hold his ground, because if he was regulated by the FDA, the USDA, whatever that is, then he would have to spray his meat down with stuff that preserve it longer. And he's saying he doesn't want to because he wants fresh, clean, organic, and this is what customers want. So yeah, they are aware of, whoever's buying from him are fully aware of what's going on, because they're actually investing into his business in a sense.
Okay.
It's just a way to get around all the regulations.
Not funny. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of ways to get around regulations. And so I can see it's a little frustrating to me that the government is allowed to target things like that, because then as the smaller guy, so do they hire lawyers and stuff like that to help with those kinds of things?
I think he did now. I think he just kind of took whatever was handed to him. I don't know how that all works, but I think he finally hired a lawyer to take care of it.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't want to talk negative about the USDA or the FDA.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
It's good that those people are in places to keep food processing plants in check. Otherwise it'd be filth and it'd be bad. But
well, and that's part of the reason why, I'm one of those people. I'm actually in the middle of the road. Like I said, I have friends personally that I know that got hospitalized from drinking raw milk. So I understand why they're regulating meats and why they're regulating milk and all of this stuff. But at the same time, and that's why they put all these laws in place to help people. But on the other side, I can see, there's a lot of overreach and stuff, like that they really shouldn't be doing. So, I can see both sides of the coin, so to speak. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, I think, if you're an adult, you should be able to figure out if you want to drink raw milk or not, and then go from there, So anyway, I was trying to see if there was, So is there any hint that they are glad to be American? So are they glad to be American? Do they see their freedoms being taken away? Do they vote? How does that work?
They love being Americans. That's kind of a whole nother topic, but they didn't typically vote. I think in 2020, though, more Amish people than ever stepped up and voted, just because they don't want their country to go backwards. So yeah, I think, typically where they didn't vote, a lot of them started in 2020. Hopefully that continues. I don't know how much that really does in the voting, but I think locally it really matters. And I wish more of them would do that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, how many Amish are there in the country?
500,000? I'm not sure.
So, I mean, it might make a dent if it was a really close election, I guess, but
it could have. Ohio's always right there on I don't know, but then
yeah, they don't take government subsidies or anything like that, though, right? And they pay taxes, right?
Yes, some of them, most of them, the majority. The stricter ones, they don't have social security numbers, they don't have birth certificates, so those ones don't. Then they'll have to work, if they're working for somebody else, they'll have to work with cash under the table because of that.
Oh wow. Huh. Yeah. So how did they do for medical situations? Is all their medical needs cared for at home? What if somebody's having a heart attack or something major? Do they have babies at home? How does all their medical stuff work?
In our community, they use the medical system just like anybody else. They'll have
regular hospitals.
They'll call the ambulance. Yep. They'll call the sheriff out if there's problems, like as far as stuff being stolen. But yeah, and medical, cancer patients will go to hospitals. Babies being born, more and more are being born at home. In our community, they actually built can't remember what it's called, but yeah, birthing center. So it just made it a lot cheaper for families to have a baby being born. They didn't have to pay the hospital prices. But yeah, there's always, in that facility, there's always somebody who can take him to the hospital if something goes wrong.
But they don't have medical insurance.
Nope. They have Amish Aid, which is the best insurance there is.
So they just all come together and help with the bills then?
Yeah. So they they tithe to the church, however much they want. And then since nobody gets paid in the church, the bishop, the preachers don't get paid, they use that tithing money to buy, maybe benches or the bench wagon. But once they have that, the rest just goes to hospital bills for community-wide, even different states as well. If somebody has a $200,000 hospital bill, it's paid for. On the other hand, typically families, if it's, under 1,000, under, maybe 2,000-3,000, they'll just pay for it themselves.
Just pay the cash price for it.
And the Amish aid, if not enough money is being tithed, they will come around and collect a certain portion, like a certain percentage of what you're worth, as far as house, horses, and stuff, which is not that often. Like, it's cheap health insurance, very cheap.
So are the Amish pretty good with their money? I mean, they don't have debt probably, right? Or do they?
Yes.
Do they?
I don't know about the stricter communities, but yeah, our community has,
like credit card debt or buggy debt. I mean,
the huge mortgages now, the RV industry here in northern Indiana was booming. They were making $100,000 a year, which just made land prices go way up. So yeah, some of those guys are, since the RV industry has slowed down, they're really concerned about being able to make their mortgage payments. A lot of them own boats and RVs. I don't know if those are on payments or not. Yeah, I'm a little concerned for myself.
Wow.
But yeah, it just depends on the person, because there's Amish who are really good with their money, and then there's some who aren't. It just depends on the person.
Just like everybody. Yeah. That's always when I didn't know that they got mortgages or anything like that. I thought that was something that they were against, but that's interesting to know, huh? Did they?
Might be, but yeah, not ours.
So that thing going around that we had the last couple of years, did they agree with the other thing that that you got in your arm to try and deal with that? Somebody wanted to know, do they agree with that?
Nope.
Or do they get those?
I'm sure a few did. But for the majority, they didn't. For the majority, the majority of them just, they kind of tried to follow the rules as much as possible. They didn't like it, but they believed in herd immunity.
Do they believe in getting those for kids for school or anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of them do or did. I think a lot of them are kind of starting to research that a little bit more, and they're like, maybe not. But so yeah, the Amish are waking up to some of these things, like the rest of the world is, to what's good and what's bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Huh?
All the world in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Let's see. So I have one more question about technology and all that kind of stuff. And then several people asked about what they actually believe. So this question says, why do they live with no technology like electricity and running water, but then purchase and use propane refrigerators? We kind of touched on this a little bit, but I was just going to go back to this a little bit more. The amount of energy and technology used to create and build one, then to get it to the store, then shipped to them is enormous. I'm curious, since watching a show about an Amish family that upgraded their kitchen with granite countertops and using all the power machines and shipping trucks and everything. And they got stainless steel propane refrigerators and stoves and all that. So we kind of talked about this a little bit, but how do they justify? How do they justify it? I mean, we see the hypocrisy, and we kind of touched on that a little bit, but what do they say to justify using these things?
The more modern stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. It's just, I think it just kind of evolves with the time. I like the hay baler. I've heard in the 50s when that first came out, baling, because they used to put up loose hay in the barns. And then when the hay baler came out, that was evil. That was the mark of the beast, is what was going around in the Amish communities. Can't have that, the mark of the beast. But now everybody does. And now they even have little carts that power the wagon that pulls the baler, and the horses are mostly there just to steer. They might as well get a tractor. It's just so hard to explain why they make these decisions the way they do. It's just, they're so wrapped up, I think, in the material that they kind of lose the focus. They don't see the big picture.
Okay. Are they in? Oh, go ahead.
Like one thing was, so when they say allow a new thing, so let's say you're now allowed to, if somebody wants a riding lawnmower for their lawn, to mow their lawn, he would have to go to the bishop and say, hey, I think we should be allowed to have riding lawnmowers for our lawn. Could we vote on that? Could we have one? So then the bishop would, in a following Sunday, would bring that up with all the church members, and he would take a vote. And if 2 people are against it, then it's not allowed. So even though these people would love to have some of these conveniences, I don't think they would ever have enough courage to go to the bishop about it, because then they might get talked about like, yeah, so-and-so wanted to have a riding lawnmower. Come on, man, we're Amish, right? There's a lot of like,
but we have a generator that has the same basic engine that the riding lawnmower does.
Yep. So yeah, I've actually seen them around here pulling behind mower to mow their fields with a garden tractor with no mower deck underneath. Like, it just makes no sense at all. Like, but it's just them trying to restrict themselves. It's just, they're just 50 years behind the rest of society.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're gonna take a.
Oh, go ahead.
We're going to take a commercial break right now, guys. Go check out our Dining on a Dime cookbooks. If you want an Amish bread recipe right here in volume 2. Now, honestly, it's just a regular bread recipe, but people like the name Amish bread, and it's one that, the Amish used to use, or they said. So go check it out, guys. 25% off right now. We are with Amish Potato. We so appreciate him. Mike is here now, so he's going to put in the link for the Amish Potato in just a second. He's going to go get that. And we've got one other question. Then we're going to go into the religious kind of. My viewers were very interested in what they believe. Pat says, "Are your parents and siblings still living in the Amish community? If so, are they okay with you being ex-Amish?"
Yes, they obviously didn't like that I left the Amish, but yeah, most of them are living in the Amish community, still Amish, but we interact all the time. And, that is not, we can't, in some stricter communities, once you leave the Amish community, you don't get to see your family again, but that is not the case in my more modern, more lenient community. I'm still different. They don't like that I'm not Amish, but they've just become okay with it and just accept the fact that I'm never going to be Amish.
So do you visit them, like just go for dinner and holidays and?
Yep. So I stop in and actually play guitar with my sisters once every week.
Oh, wow.
And then, every once a month, Saturdays, my brothers and my dad, we go out for breakfast, and so we interact. They had a yearly, every summer they would have a camp out, and me, my wife and kids got to go. So we're just different, but we're still, we're included in everything.
I thought they didn't use instruments.
Well, they're not supposed to, I guess, but some of them do.
Wow.
Psalms 150. They kind of miss that one. Yeah, they don't like people who play too many instruments or get too good at it, because then they say, well, then that's too prideful, that you're going to want to start being on stage and entertaining people, and it's just not good.
Yeah. So you weren't shunned when you decided to not be Amish then?
I was, because I joined the church and then left. So because I left the church, I broke that. When you join the Amish church, when you get baptized, you make a promise, an oath, that you will stay with that church and follow its rules for the rest of your life. I have a video of my cousin who's did a really good explanation on that.
She did that's a great video, actually. I'll try and find it and put it in the description after the show is over, but I saw that and I was really impressed. She did a great job on that.
She's really smart. So once you leave, then you break that promise, so they shun you. Fortunately, in my community, I only had to be shunned 1.5 years. And since I found another church to attend or become a member of, the bishop, he called me up, said, hey, we think it's time to lift the shunning. If you're a member of the church, just have your pastor send me a letter and we're good to go. So I got my pastor to send him a letter. saying that
of a non-Amish church, they were okay with that?
They were, yep. That's our
Really?
community. So, yeah, not most stricter communities won't allow that.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised. I have never heard of them doing that before. That's interesting. Okay, well, so let's get into that then. So, do they believe in the Bible just like evangelical Christians, or do they think differently than us? So you kind of hit on this a little bit, but let's go into a little bit more detail.
They read the same Bible. They just take a lot of things out of context.
But it's the King James Bible, right?
Yeah. So originally they're supposed to stick with the German Bible. I believe it's the Lutheran. I'm not 100% sure on this, but they're supposed to the German Bible is supposed to be their foundation. I think it still does have the Apocrypha in it. That's the right name for it. Mm-hmm. But since we all struggle with reading German because we don't speak German, our community is allowed to have the King James also. And some of their Bibles actually have the German with the King James right next to each other. There's like one page has German, one has King James. So, but yeah, they do read the Bible, but
like daily or
some might daily, some might just weekly on their off Sunday. They don't take a Bible to church. It's just the preacher stands up and preaches, a couple chapters or reads a couple chapters. They still not unknowingly, but they stick with tradition, what their forefathers taught them over what the scripture says. They would say they don't, but the forefathers, they were coming out of the Reformation and all that. People were just getting Bibles in their hands. This is kind of my opinion, but they still got some things wrong. And they just, at that time, they didn't have the information we do, the history and the facts and stuff and they didn't have the time to get together and discuss biblical things. So the forefathers just kind of came out, taught what they believed. And then, I think with Jacob Ammon converting from the Catholic Church, the state church, to the Anabaptist movement, brought a lot of his traditions and beliefs with him. And that's kind of where the Amish started. So
interesting.
That's a deep subject, but
so Angela wants to know, are the beards a religious thing for them, or is it just a Amish tradition?
It's, I would say, tradition, but they go back to the Old Testament somewhere. It talks about men having beards. I have not looked into that myself.
Isn't that funny? Because my dad got kicked out of a Baptist church because he had a beard.
Oh, go really? Figure. I think it might. I don't know if it was in the Old Testament law or something, but I don't know.
Was it?
Levites
Mike
supposed to cut their beards.
Mike said it was the Levites that he thought were supposed to cut their beards, but not supposed to cut their beards. Okay, so Mike thinks maybe it was the Levites. I don't know. Okay. Let's see. Do they preach at church or just read the Bible?
So they preach. The preacher usually studies the Bible during the week, and then if it's he'll just stand up and preach. And they believe that what the preacher is saying is coming from God directly. Through God speaking through that preacher.
And what Romaine wants to know, why are women not allowed to sit with the men in church?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure. They separate. They always have. I don't know if I can answer that. That's a good question.
Okay, so let's see. So they read the King James Bible and the German Bible. Why don't they follow the food laws of the Old Testament? So if they're doing this, I guess they're wondering why aren't they following the Old Testament laws if they're doing all these other things for? Mm-hmm. Do you happen to know?
That's another great question. I don't, and it's just been this way for years, and they just, this is how our forefathers, this is how Grandpa did it. This is how our forefathers did it. It's just why we do it. Trying to question them on that is impossible almost. Like they don't look into it. It's just how it's always been, or, it's how the forefathers, that's their argument. And there's no healthy discussions with what the scripture is saying.
So they don't really talk about the Bible or what's in the Bible or read the Bible together or anything.
No, they might read it as a family. Typically what they'll do when they're reading scripture that doesn't agree with their religion, I think a lot of times what happens is that they're reading, and then what was I going to? Oh yeah, like they'll see verses that agree with their original. Oh yeah, see, the Bible says this, but then they come to the controversial stuff that doesn't agree with their original. They just kind of skip over it, and they're blind to it somehow. Like it just doesn't register. Like I don't know why they're like, okay, whoa, what's this mean? And and occasionally people will ask that question, like, well, what about this verse, Dad? And then he's like, well, we just don't understand the whole Bible, and we never should. We can. They say you can read the Bible too much, and it'll lead you astray.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
wow.
That's because the people who do read it too much and study it a lot, they start seeing the truth, and then they end up leaving. So that's why the Amish who still remain Amish say, well, see, they read the Bible too much, they got into it too much, and now they have a different belief, and they're misled by Satan.
That's because their eyes were finally opened.
Yep.
Do they believe in Jesus?
They do. Yep. And
what do they believe about him?
So if you ask them, they'll say that yes, Jesus, is the Son of God. He died on the cross for our sins, and it's because of him why we go to heaven. It's because he died for our sins. But then on the flip side, they believe that you can lose your salvation, that you can fall off the beaten path, and you might not get to heaven. So because of that belief, they still really have to rely on themselves to get to heaven. So they're not fully trusting in Jesus and his righteousness, right? So they'll say they are, but if you question them further, like it sounds good when you talk to them, but if you question them further, you'll discover that they're still relying on themselves to be good enough.
So why don't they evangelize?
I believe that goes back to the Anabaptist movement. So when they got kicked out of Switzerland, they were being persecuted there, and France wanted farmers. So they told all these Anabaptist Amish farmers, like, hey, come to our country and you can live the way you want, farm our lands, as long as you don't proselytize or evangelize. So if you don't share. And so I think it still stems from that. That would be my guess.
Wow.
So another thing they say is that they try to portray Christ by their actions, not by their words. Which,
well, I mean, but
we're told to go make disciples of all men.
Yeah. Valerie wants to know, do they believe in the resurrection?
Yes. Yep.
They do.
Yep.
Interesting.
Very similar Christian beliefs. It's just a little off.
Yeah, but a little matters. Unfortunately, do they celebrate like Christmas and Easter?
They do. Our community does. Yep, just like anybody else. Presents, no Christmas tree, minimal decorations inside the house, not outside. But yeah, Christmas gifts, usually Christmas gathering with family, with cousins and stuff like that. And then Easter, they'll do egg hunts. And
this is interesting. Do they fellowship with other so it's kind of a catch-22. Do they fellowship with other true believers in Christ outside the group? So once again, the Amish really aren't although there are groups of Amish that do believe in true salvation. Like there's some up in Montana that moved to Libby, Montana that I had heard of, that they believed in salvation. They got shunned because they were telling everyone, this is not what the Bible says. The Bible says, we have grace. We can just ask and we will just go to heaven. And so then they moved to Montana and started their own group because they liked living Amish, but they believed in grace without works. And so what was my whole point in that? Sorry, I had let's see, what was I talking about?
The question.
Oh yeah. Do they so anyway, normal Amish don't believe true Christianity, like, grace alone, but do they fellowship with non-Amish Christians?
So they'll hang out with them, and occasionally they'll even go to non-Amish churches if they're traveling or something, or with friends, invite them and stuff like that. And they're open, they're okay with that. They'll just while they're sitting in a normal church service, they'll just kind of close their ears to the teaching in case they might get misled, right? So, but yeah, they're open to hanging out with people. I don't know if that's what she means by fellowshipping or not. Most Amish people have friends who aren't Amish that they'll go do stuff with.
Really?
Yeah, they just won't usually discuss biblical things a whole lot, doctrine. Amish usually they just go blank when you start bringing up doctrine.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Let's see. Then there was one. Oh, so this is interesting. This is kind of going along with the prepping thing, but do they believe in Bible prophecy? Do they believe in the rapture? Do they believe that Christ is coming back? What do they believe in the whole Bible prophecy end times type thing?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I never knew there was different views of end times before I left.
Yeah.
What they believe is that Jesus will come back someday. Nobody knows when, and at that point in time, we will be judged, whether it's heaven or hell. So I would say that because of Christ's righteousness and my faith in that I will be saved. I will go to heaven when I die. They don't. They believe that you can't know, and then when Christ comes back, when Christ comes, he will just separate. Either heaven or hell. And the tribulation, they believe that the tribulation is going to happen before then. But
so they don't believe in a rapture of the church. Their post-trib is, people would say that Christians are going to go through the tribulation, and then it's just the second coming of Christ. There's no rapture of the church.
They would say the rapture would be when the ones will go with Christ at that point in time. Not like we believe that.
Do they think that we are in the end times or anything like that, or do they even talk about it?
It probably depends on the person. Some of them, yeah, they've always been saying like the end is near.
Really?
Yes. I never imagined that I would ever turn 40 just because of the way they talk. Like it's bad and the end is near. I didn't think we'd see year 2000. But that's just my perspective. So yeah, they're always saying, the end is near, and but yeah, I don't know, as far as prophecy, usually they don't discuss that too much, or they don't believe too much about what's going on. They just don't know. They don't know how much worse it's going to get, I guess, before Christ comes back.
Yeah. It's interesting because the people that moved out here to Wyoming from us, the reason why they left was because the government was starting to clamp down on them for stuff. And it's crazy, but the main reason they moved was because they were clamping down on them using outhouses.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want to have to put in a septic system.
And
I thought that was really interesting.
I've heard that too, like in Wisconsin or something. Like, yeah, the government, the house, the building. No, maybe that was Ohio.
No, it was Wisconsin. That's where they came from. Yeah.
So yeah, the building codes required a septic tank, and they refused. They tried to pull the religion thing. It's a religious freedom, but it's not working so good as it used to. But and I don't know, once again, maybe they're overstepping the government's overstepping their boundaries. But then on the other hand, I've heard of these outhouses leaking into creeks, which is not,
and somebody said, "Oh, you're trashing." No, we're not trashing the Amish. We're just talking about, the things that they believe and that kind of thing. And I think that there's this stereotypical fantasy that people want to be Amish because they're just so pure and they're so kind and they're so gracious. Yet there really is a dark side to the Amish too. I think it was your cousin that was talking about. I can't remember who was talking about, the whole incest and abuse. And there's Amish Rescue Mission. Is that right? Amish Rescue Mission goes in and helps some of these families healing with some of these things and getting the help that they need with some of these things. And it's not just all roses and buggies, I guess. I mean, I don't know how you say it, but it's not just the pure everything's hunky-dory living in the 1800s type thing. There is a lot of dark stuff that goes on like that. And there's a lot of things that they do that are flat out illegal. I mean, really, they're flat out illegal. Like the whole outhouse thing. The reason why we have septic tanks is to protect the creeks and rivers from human sewage seeping into them, making people sick, from some of this stuff. And so, well, like I said earlier, I don't agree with the government just totally overstepping everything. I think if they want to have an outhouse, that's fine. Maybe they should have a permit to have an outhouse to make sure it's dug correctly and they're not just dumping sewage, willy-nilly. But at the same time, I do see that the government kind of can step in, a little too much for those kinds of things. I don't know. What do your parents think about all this kind of stuff when they hear about these things, or do they even talk about it?
Well, they don't, because, actually, so my parents, coming from a more liberal community, more modern community, they follow the laws. Like if they're putting up a house, and they all have septic tanks, but they typically follow the laws. They don't go against the government, but these stricter communities do. So my parents, when they're talking, I've heard them talk about these stricter communities, and they just think those Amish take it too far. Come on. But like you have to live on a dirt road. Like, come on, man. What's so bad about a tar road? But when you really think about it, my parents are kind of doing the same thing, just on a lesser level. And something you touched on earlier, I work with great Amish people. These Amish people they're great people for the most part. But yes, there is darkness and turmoil behind the scenes that nobody ever sees. And there's a lot of silenced people who don't get a voice and have to live with hurt because it gets squashed down, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think that from what I understand, it's a lot harder to get help let's say you were talking about the lady who was abused going to court. There's no support. I don't know, in your community, or in your parents' community, I should say, is there support when a wife is being abused by her husband or not? I mean, I know in the older sex, or whatever you want to call it, they're very strict about, the wife pretty much just doesn't have a say. Is that the way it is with like your parents' community too, or?
Yeah, I would like to think so, but I don't think it is. If there's a struggle like that, then the woman or the guy will be sent to this Amish counseling center, and turn notifications off. Anyway, and those Amish counseling centers are just, they're not licensed. They don't know what they're doing. All they do is just kind of try to get them to conform to the Amish ways, forgive and forget, forgive and forget. Well, it's not how it works. And there's just I think though, with Amish Rescue Mission is just changing things leaps and bounds. And I think the more that stuff comes out, the more these Amish women have a place to go, or, men too, whatever. But their voice can be heard and they can get help in the correct way. And I'm really excited about what they're doing.
Well, and they don't force people to not be Amish. They actually try to fix the problems and repair the family so they can stay in the community, from what I understand. Is that right?
Yep, correct. If they want, if they so choose. Yep.
Yeah, that's I think a great system to have for something, and it gives them a safe place to stay while they're working on things and stuff like that. So what is an example of the number one struggle that Amish people live with continually? What would you say their number one struggle is?
Not having a car, probably, in this community anyway. Not being able to just, I would say that would be their number one struggle. And having to pay drivers. That's just off of the top of my head. I'll probably think of something.
And it's probably dangerous for the buggies isn't it? Because
Yeah,
I
it's
can see cars not being patient and that kind of thing.
yeah, we're so used to having buggies and bikes on the road, so I think we're kind of used to it. But I still, man, I don't know how they do it. Like, there's so many people out there with phones in the car while they're driving, and all it takes is looking down once, and the bike is toast, or that buggy is, history. So, but yeah, just getting around, they struggle with, if you live 30 miles away from a family member, you have to hire somebody to go over there, and that's not cheap nowadays. So,
how far can a buggy go?
I think about 15 miles. Maybe you can stretch that out a little bit. But yeah, 15 miles in one day. That would be 30 total. 15 there and 15 back.
Yeah. So what would be? Oh, go ahead.
Some people have been known to drive to a friend's house, then grab their horse, and then continue on. But yeah, typically it's hiring people to take them there.
So I would say then, what's the number one? Would you say a car is the number one thing that if the Amish could have, they would have that? Or is there some other technology that they wish they could have?
I'm guessing cars. Yeah.
Cars.
If they were all being honest, I'm guessing cars. Maybe.
That's interesting.
I don't know what else. Maybe they do like movies.
They like what?
Movies, watching TV. If they get, they don't do it at home, but like if they go on vacation and they're staying in hotels, they'll indulge. And I've taken, when I was in Rumspringa, I've taken groups of Amish to Colorado and stuff to visit. And I was annoyed because I'd get up at 7 a.m. and I'd be ready to go sightseeing. Well, they were all still in bed till 10 because they were up till 1, 2 in the morning watching movies on whatever. But
that's pretty good.
Cars would be the
number one thing. Yeah. They now see, those are things you don't ever. It never occurred to me that the Amish actually go to hotels and just stay on vacation and actually watch the TV and things. I mean, I would think that would be totally, if you're staying away from the world, that would be totally against everything. Do they go swimming or anything like that in the hotels?
Yeah. Yep. The ones from our community. Once again, I can't really speak for the stricter communities, but yeah, in our community, they'll go swimming, and they'll go to Florida. A lot of them just tons of Amish pile into Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. And our Amish, basically, they do what everybody else does, except, well, they don't really hang out in bars or anything like that. They just do everything anybody else does, except for drive cars and have electricity wired in.
Do they drink alcohol at all?
Some. Usually, once you get married, they don't get drunk anymore, but they might have a drink or two.
Interesting, huh?
And a lot of them make their own wine. Some of them
make their own wine.
Yeah. So yeah, for communion, the deacon of the church he makes the wine, and they actually use wine. So yeah.
Sorry. I just think that's the funniest thing. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, I mean, I think from what I've seen, they're hard workers. Mm-hmm. They seem dedicated. Like the divorce rate is pretty much nil from what I know, which can be a good thing or maybe a bad thing if you're being abused or something. But at the same time, I think that, the non-Amish English people, they give up on marriage and those kinds of things, way too easy. Mm-hmm. I'm sure Mike would have been more than happy to divorce me more than 1,000 times in the 20 years we've been married. No comments from the peanut gallery over there.
Hey, Mike, we'll talk later.
But so I can see their dedication and their hard work, and that's what's really missing, I think, in the American society, well, all the world probably, but the American society today, and a willingness to work with each other. You don't see that sense of community. And I think as far as prepping kind of goes, that's why, I think that's one reason why the Amish aren't prepping really, because they know that they can work together and count on each other, where normal outside world, you really can't count on anybody.
I would agree. I would say they'll survive longer because of that working together thing, supporting each other for sure.
Yeah.
One example is a few years ago, a house burned down close to my parents' house, completely burned down. And a week later, they had a new house up, fully furnished, ready to go. They had clothes sewn for the family, and they were, in a week. I'm not going to speak to the quality of the house, but at least they had a warm house to live in, and clothes and furniture and everything to go again.
Wow.
That's kind of rare nowadays. And, if something does go bad, they will have each other's backs, and they will share and food, whatever they might have.
Because they don't have insurance of any kind, right? No house insurance, no buggy insurance, no insurance. I knew they didn't have health insurance, but nothing yet.
It's all through that Amish aid, the church thing.
Yeah. So if their house burns down, they're toast unless friends and family help out.
Yeah.
So, wow. So would they help you? Like if your house burned down and you didn't have anything, would they help you since you're not in the church anymore?
Probably not, because I have insurance. So they would just, let insurance take care of it.
But I mean, if you didn't have insurance, would they help you with something like that? Or do they? The question was, one of the questions was, well, let's see, I can't find it, but are they, with bad times coming, are the Amish expecting to help people that are non-Amish in their community?
I would guess so. I would guess our community anyway would be willing to help other people in the community. They would? Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
I might be wrong, but I would guess that. Yeah, because they've gone down. They've some people who didn't have to work in the factories or whatever. Like if there was a tornado hit somewhere, they would go down and help rebuild or clean up, and just because they wanted to help. So,
really,
sometimes that's a little hard to because once we're born again, the goodness of Christ comes out, and you see a lot of that in the Amish community, and it's so sometimes I question what I think they what they believe sometimes, but it's because there is a lot of good. We have talked about a lot about it. There is a lot of good that comes out of the Amish community, and they usually are willing to help other people.
Yeah,
I'm just more familiar with helping other Amish. That's typically where it goes to, but.
That makes sense. Well, and for those of you who are just joining us, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but he was only shunned from his family when he decided to leave the Amish church, basically, for 1.5 years. Did you say? Was that how long it was?
Yeah.
And then because he was a member of another church, the bishop said that he could see his family. And so you didn't see your family or anything for that 1.5 years, but you've been able to stay in contact with them and all that since then.
I did see him. Actually, my sister got married during that period, but because I was shunned, I had to, at the dinner table, I had to sit next to my mom, and she had to dish out my food. They serve it the food family style. And so she had to dish out my mashed potatoes, because if I would have taken the thing and scoop my own food out and then pass it on, the person next to me wouldn't have been able to eat out of that bowl, because I guess it was tainted or something. So some communities you have to sit in a completely separate table while you're being shunned. In our community, they let us sit there, but we can't. They have to dish the food to us. So they can give us stuff, but they can't take anything from us.
But now you can.
Yep, the shunning has been lifted, and now I can. I guess it's interesting, because had I gone to an Amish-owned store at the time and tried to buy products from them, they would have said, "No, you just take the products. We don't want your money. We can't take your money, but you can have the products." I wouldn't have done that, but that's what happens.
So how do you share the gospel with that then?
You mean as far as how do I share it with them, or how do they? Or
are you able to at all?
I've tried. Yeah, they just kind of check out. And, I've given them Bible verses and everything, but they just don't want to hear it. They're stuck with the teachings of the forefathers.
Yeah, but they don't want to hear it, but they do hear it.
Yeah.
So you never know.
So yeah, I think the best method would be to just keep asking them about certain verses, like what does this mean? What does this mean? And then that hopefully would plant a seed in them, and they start questioning it. And then because most Amish people who end up leaving start by questioning things, just little things at a time. Like, why is this? What's this say? And then just that crack just kind of opens up, and then they know the truth and they leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I heard somebody, it must not have been you, it must have been somebody else. I thought it was you, but I heard somebody say that when you're English and you're purchasing something from them, or you're at their store or whatever, they said that they will listen to you because they're polite and they're just not going to be rude. And they said, evangelize all you want to the Amish because they won't listen to ex-family members who have come to Christ, but they'll listen to non-family members that they've never met before. And even though, you know, they may not agree with it or whatever, they at least stand there and listen. So, you know,
you guys have a better chance than we do, for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, you know, even like the other day when I was talking to the gal that was here, and she told me how, well, I was telling CJ before the show that she told me that they can ride in planes, or I mean, they can ride in cars, they can ride in buses, and they can ride on trains, but they can't ride on planes. But there's a Bible verse that says that they can't do planes. And I was just like, I asked her, I said, oh, well, what Bible verse is that? And she said, I don't know. My husband knows which one it is, but I don't know what it is. And I thought it was interesting how she didn't really know what the verse was, but she just knew that they couldn't ride in planes. And so I thought, you know, and I talked to him and stuff, and you know, the little girl, they had just moved here from Wisconsin not too long ago, and the little girl was about 12 years old or something. She's like, yeah, she said something about reading. And I said, oh, do you like to read? And she said, yeah, but we have to keep reading the same books over and over again because our homeschool library, we had to leave it when we moved. And I said, oh, I'll look for some, you know, I'll look for some books. What kind do you want? And that kind of thing. So I've been collecting books to take down to them, but you never know when something is gonna.
Keep doing that. That's the way in.
Do they let their kids like read Bible books about Bible stories and stuff like that or anything? Or
we had the whole, can't remember, the blue Bible story edition, whatever. In our we had all that. Mom wanted us. My dad was not as encouraging on it, but my mom, you know, she wanted us to sit down every Sunday and read the Bible. And but yeah, like they're good with that. I just
Really? Huh?
Every once in a while, you know, mostly we were just kind of blind to what we were reading. As kids, we didn't want to read the Bible.
Yeah.
But yeah, as little kids, we'd read the Bible stories all the time.
Oh, that's interesting. Let's see. Somebody said, okay, on the head coverings, do you know why? Is it just the verse about head coverings? Is that why the women wear the head coverings, or is it something else?
It's 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Velda, my cousin, also did a great video on that one. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but
she did a really good one.
I think a lot of times, like the Bible, when they read it, they'll take it stuff literally and not gather the context around it. Then on the other hand, they miss some things that maybe they should take literally. But yeah, that's because of 1 Corinthians chapter 11. And I don't know that if a person wants to wear a head covering or feels led to, then wear it.
Yeah. You need to tell her she needs to start her own YouTube channel. Tara said she has to start her own YouTube channel. I don't know. She's really, between the two of you, you both hit different sections, you know, of being ex-Amish and things that perspectives you guys see and that kind of thing. And I just really appreciate when you have her on there, because between the two of you, you guys seem to work really well. So although cousins always do that, you know, it's kind of like brothers and sisters always sing together, or cousins always sing together because they have good harmony, you know. So that's probably why you guys work so well together. But all right, guys, please go visit CJ at the Amish Potato. His channel, I love his channel. I have been watching forever. I love all the fun stuff that you talk about. You even talk about, things that people want to know, but you really don't want to ask about. Like, where do the guys go to the bathroom at gatherings? You guys need to go check out that video. I was shocked. I did not know that the men do not go to the bathroom like regular people do so I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to tell you what they do. You need to go check out the video. It's pretty interesting. I did not know that. Let's just say there's a lot of sawdust used. I think probably a lot of sawdust used. So go check out our Dining on a Dime cookbooks, guys. 25% off right now. We even have our gluten-free, dairy-free. Whoops, right there if you are. And then our volume 1 and volume 2. Thank you, CJ, so much for coming on with us. This has been a blast. Guys, head over and subscribe to his channel, and we will see you guys next time.